Hello, everyone. I'm glad you could be here with me again today or tonight. And in this video, I'm going to give you detailed descriptions of my experience with the goddess Aset, or my mother goddess Aset. Most people know her by her Greek name, Isis. Goddess Isis. Her name is spelled in different ways: Auset, Aset, and in some translations, they believe that the Greeks picked up the name Isis by listening to the way the Egyptians pronounced her name, almost sounding like Aset. So it can vary with how her name is pronounced, but she's also known as the goddess of 10,000 names. She is my holy mother, goddess Aset. And I'm going to start from the beginning. So when I was, when I was a little girl, I had always been drawn to ancient Egypt. Always. When I was a child, one of the movies we were allowed to watch was a movie called The Ten Commandments. And it was an old film. And I couldn't say anything because my parents, they were divorced, as many families, as that unfortunately happens to many families. Um, my family was no exception with that. And so my biological mother was very, very religious. And there's nothing wrong with religion or being religious. Specifically, she was very, very strict in her religious beliefs. And so, even as a child, when I watched the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, I believe, as Moses, um, I watched it when I was a little girl because secretly I liked all the Egyptian stuff. But I couldn't really say that because the Egyptian women were vain and the Egyptians were vain, idol worshippers and whatnot. But when I was a girl, a little girl, I loved the way the Egyptian women were dressed. I loved the clothing, to say. I loved the clothing. I loved the white linen, the way it was, sheer, but, the way it was set up, even in the hieroglyphics. When I was just a little girl, I loved watching things about ancient Egypt. I loved the clothing. I loved the jewelry. I loved everything about it. And so I couldn't say anything about it, but I loved ancient Egypt even as a little girl. And so even as a little girl, I used to draw my dogs. And when I'm saying little girl, I mean like 4, 5, or 6, that age. And I would draw. I've been drawing since I was very young. I would draw all my dogs the same way, with very tall, sharp ears, long, straight nose, and a very, um, lean, long-legged body with a long tail. Always drew my dogs like that. Always. Never knew why until recently, well, the past couple of years. But anyway, so I was always drawn to ancient Egypt. And I was always drawn to the headdress, that golden headdress, and the white clothes the women wore. And specifically, I was always drawn to the name Isis. Always. When I became a young adult in my early 20s, I I would play video games with my brother, and I would name my character like 1S, 1S, you know, Isis. I was always drawn to that name. I put my character in, white and gold armor, and name her 1S, 1S, or something like that. So just always drawn to that name and that image of her, with her wings and the white and the gold. I was always drawn to it. And in my journey, as I started to become more aware of the truth, the reality of everything in this big world, I found myself thinking about her as always being drawn to her, being drawn to ancient Egypt. And I one day allowed myself to be curious. And I went into a metaphysical store, and there they had an oracle deck um, that was so the Isis oracle deck. And I was instantly drawn to it because it had Goddess Aset on it. At that time, I did not know that was her real name. I thought, when I saw her name, I thought Isis. And I bought it right away. And I began to meditate because the oracle deck not only had the cards, but of course the little booklet that went along with it. And in there are certain meditations that are joined with, each specific card. So I would meditate. That's when I first started meditating. I had never meditated before then. So I meditated, and um, I started to see her for the first time, and she seemed so bright to me. I tried to go by, the rules of meditation and what the book had recommended and things like that, but sometimes my mind, she would just sit there with me, regardless of what the meditation recommended. And she would sit with me, and I just recall her being so bright. Everything about her was bright, as if light came off of her. She was glowing. And she was such that brilliant white light, like purity. And in my mind's eye, she had beautiful, warm, like mocha skin, warm skin, beautiful. And she always had blue eyes for me. And black hair. And she always wore a white gown with that beautiful golden collar. And when I saw her, excuse me, I saw her with her wings always with her wings, like an angel, beautiful wings, huge and beautiful. And I saw her with that sun disk on her head as well. In some cases, I am familiar with the hieroglyphics of ancient Egypt depicting her in two different ways. I know Goddess Hathor, of course. She has her, she has almost like horns, almost with a little sun disk, but no wings. And my mother goddess Aset she can be depicted with that sun disk, or she can be depicted with that little throne as a crown on her head. Literally, throne. Like she's the queen of heaven. She holds that position. And when I saw her, it was with her wings and the sun disk that I saw her. So that's how she showed herself to me. And when I first met her in meditation, I cried. I cried a lot because when she approached me, and still to this day, the amount of love that I feel from her is so consuming, so encompassing and enveloping that all of my barriers, all of the trauma that I had been through, my barriers just melted away. And she could see me for who I was. And she loved me. I was, she embraced me. And I'm trying not to cry right now. So it was overwhelming amounts of love from her. And her behavior is so motherly, very motherly toward me. And again, of course, as I state in all of my videos, when it comes to deities, specifically, someone else or your experience with a deity may be different than mine because everyone is different. And in order to grow, they have to approach us in different ways. So my experiences may be different from your experiences, or we might have similar ones. So just be aware of that if anything sounds different from your experiences. Okay? So continuing, I began to meditate with her more and more. And I was just absolutely in love, for lack of a better cause. Just so happy and so I just this depth of love within me for her was magnified by her own love for me, and it was very, very healing, very, very healing, specifically in the fact that she is a mother goddess, and her approach to me was very much, you are my daughter. You are my daughter. And so I began to meditate more with her, and she began to open me up a little bit more. She taught me about forgiveness, a lot of forgiveness, and a lot of love. How to forgive myself, how to forgive others and let it go. because that pain that we feel, that we hold on to, all it does is hurt us. So let it go. It's not helping you. It's okay to let it go. You deserve better than that. So after much, crying and just exhaustion, really, I let it go. And little by little, I started finding that I started realizing I should have more respect for myself, more esteem for myself, more love for myself. That I had a voice too, and very important aspects that she revitalized in me. How to love myself and how to forgive myself and others. So she sent me on my journey. She started bringing me toward that goal, my highest good. And so as I started using these oracle cards, a card that she had me pulling all the time was her holding a baby. It was like a statue of her holding a baby. And she would bring that card up, bring that card up. And she would also bring the card up of the Isis knot, or, her special knot. I'll see if I can find a picture of it and add it in. That knot. And so it was almost like she was letting me know, like, I love you. I love you, my child. I love you. You are my child. And that knot is a symbol, like her symbol, on my heart, on my soul. So I started pulling those cards, and I finally recognized, I was like, she's definitely saying, you're mine, you're my child, you're my daughter. And I was very happy about that. Very, very happy. It felt right. I had felt like I had finally come home, and I was where I wanted to be for so long, but had been, too afraid, or been told so many other things that I was, hesitant and afraid of these things. And it finally, after getting through all of that nonsense, I was finally home. It was finally me. So I was very happy about that. And oftentimes, as my relationship with her grew, I would have, of course, meditations where I saw her. And in these meditations, I was very young. She would show me images in my mind. Sometimes I would see things just like as if I was looking, but with my eyes closed, but as if I was seeing them with my eyes open. And sometimes they were flashes of things that would come very suddenly, very clearly. And I wouldn't know where these images came from. I would not recognize them, so they weren't from my brain. So she would show me these images of us together. And they did a lot of good for me. And she would show herself, of course, having her wings, but in some of the dreams that she sent to me, and some of the images that she sent to me, she would show me with wings. And I never really thought about it. I had just kind of been grateful and thankful that, something that made me feel like, I guess to say, something that made me feel good inside, pure inside, In one dream I had, there was I think he was a soldier or a knight. I don't know who he was. But it was pouring down rain and there were people standing around and he had fallen. I think he had been killed or been slain by one of the people. And I don't know what he had done. I wasn't witness to anything he had done. But they were just standing around him as if he had it coming kind of feeling that I got from them. And as he laid in the rain, I I remember coming up to him, and as soon as I touched him, I felt this overwhelming feeling and sensation of sadness and heartbreak. And I didn't even see his face or any part of his body. I don't remember seeing it. He was covered in armor. And I started to weep. I cried so hard for this man. And I don't know who he was, but I cried so hard, almost begging and pleading, crying so hard for this man. So hard for him. Like my whole heart was breaking. And then I woke up and I had to catch myself because I was still crying, and had to catch myself. And then during another dream I approached, there were two men, but I remember the man that I was looking at, he was on the ground, and he was in a very dirty shirt and just rolled up on the ground, like fetal position on the ground. And when I approached him, something in me said, I knew, it kind of told me like things about him. I knew that he had been on drugs, that he wasn't what, people would say a good person. He had just made really bad decisions in life. He had stolen. He had treated people poorly, treated himself poorly, um, drank so much, used drugs, as I mentioned, hurt people, violence, fighting, stealing, this type of lifestyle. And he was on death's door from, I think drugs, from just overuse. And the other man was kind of in the same situation, but he was some distance away, down away from him. And as I went to him, I looked at him, and a woman approached me. I don't know if it was my mother, Goddess Aset. May have been. This woman had tan skin, and her wings were very large, and they were a lilac sort of color. Her hair was black and reached to about here. And she came up to me, and I remember her clearly saying, "Don't forget who you are." And I remember looking at her, and I said, "I will never forget who I am." And when I knelt down to the man, I touched him. I felt that pain again, that heartbreak again. It was, my whole world was just crashing down. I felt so painful, so heartbroken, as if everything inside of him I could feel, I could see. And I started crying so hard. I was just wailing. And I remember I said, I know he has done wrong. I know he has betrayed your love and betrayed himself. I know he has led a path of destruction. But I beg you, please forgive him. Please forgive him. And I just cried. I cried so hard. And I was begging, I believe, like I was begging the divine or divinity. I was begging, please, please forgive him. Please, I beg you, forgive him. I know he has done all these horrible things. I know, but please, please forgive him. And in that dream, I had actually had wings. They were white wings. So when I woke up from that dream, I was bawling my eyes out. And I will never forget. That's the second dream I've had where it's almost as if I'm like a mediating for someone. I don't know. But these dreams and these experiences became more intense for me after, knowing her. And I began dreaming of her as well. And in one dream, I had a dream where she was standing in my bedroom, and she was dressed in her white clothes and her wings, and she stood there in front of me like a person, like a tangible person on this plane person. And I was so excited that I hugged her. I just ran to her and I hugged her. And she just smiled at me and she held me. And in another dream, she took me above the clouds on the earth. And she flew with me. She had wings and I had wings. We were flying together, just looking down on this world. And it was just a dream completely filled with so much love, freedom. It was a beautiful dream.